I'm the community cop. Oh! Oh! Look who we got here.
Hotep, and welcome once again to another edition of Community Cop. My name is Noel Leder, one of the co-founding members of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, and I'm here today with my two co-hosts. First of all, Julian Harper.
Welcome, welcome.
Second of all, Michael Graves, a.k.a. Big Mike. Oh, wait a minute. Michael Graves is not here yet. I'm so used to doing it. We have a guest. His name is actually Attorney Vincent Agliano. He's He's on the executive committee of Discovery for Justice, and we have a very significant. First of all, welcome, Vincent.
Yeah, and just to correct you real quickly, Avagliano.
Avagliano.
I didn't do that.
Excuse me.
I know it's a mouthful,
Right.
so I don't blame you at all.
Right, but we'll call you Vincent.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm used to it.
Unfortunately, right now, our two co-hosts, Father Lucas is a little under the weather. So, Father Lucas, we hope you're watching, and we hope you feel better to see your return next week. And Michael Graves will be here shortly. He's on community cop assignment, which caused him to be a little late. So those of you expecting Michael Graves, a.k.a. Big Mike, he will be here, so stay tuned. But right now we want to talk about, before we get on these horrific, abominable, preposterous police shootings, we want to talk about a very, very significant law that is, there's a movement to get a law passed in regards to CPL 240, which is a law in regards to discovery, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and the significance of this. And then we have a meeting that we're inviting the entire community to attend to support this significant law, CPL 245, which actually repeal CPL 240. Now that's a law, well, why don't you explain it, because I think you do a little better job. And pay close attention, because this is very significant in terms of the criminal justice system and why so many individuals get housed in locations such as Rikers Island for an extended period of time, unable to pay for bail or to prove their innocence as a result of district attorneys holding on to discovery material evidence. But why don't you talk a little bit about CPL 240, what it is, and how it affects those individuals we just talked about?
Well, that's exactly right, Noel. CPL 240 basically it stands for Criminal Procedure Law 240, for those of you in the audience that don't know what that is. And CPL 240 basically addresses and sets the structure for discovery and the turning over of evidence in the state of New York if you're accused of a crime. Now, what a lot of people don't know in the state of New York is that by law, prosecutors and DAs are within their rights to withhold evidence from the defense or from the defendant or from their attorney when they're accused of a crime. And that is completely the opposite, basically, from the civil system. If you know, in the civil system, if your money is at stake, if some sort of economic right is at stake, you are entitled from day one to make discovery requests of the other side. And you can make those discovery requests And the other side is going to have to turn those things over by law. They can't withhold evidence. The standard is they have to turn over any relevant evidence, documents, materials that you need to make your case against them to protect your economic rights. But when you look at it in the criminal context, it's turned on its head, which means that in the criminal context, they basically don't have to give you anything. There are but for a few exceptions of evidence that have to be turned over. So the issue is when your money is at stake, you're entitled to everything in a civil context. So we protect those economic rights, right? But if your liberty is at stake, if you're a person who's basically, as you said, sitting in jail, you are not entitled to an iota, to a shred of the evidence as far as witness statements, as far as police reports, as far as any of those significant material pieces of evidence that are being held against you and being used to prosecute you. And you don't get those until right up until before trial. And the problem is not only that you don't get them, but at the point that you get them, you are at a complete disadvantage in comparison to the prosecution and in comparison to the DA, who has had them all the while, correct?
Yeah. Now, you said that individuals who are arrested and accused of committing a crime do not have access to the evidence that the district attorney who's prosecuting the individual up until the point of trial. Now, how long may that take? And what is the significance or the hardship of that individual who's waiting for the district attorney to turn that information over to his defense attorney?
As you can imagine, it's an incredible hardship. I mean, right now, CPL 240 has existed in this state for approximately 3 decades plus. For all of that time, and probably before, when the law was amended at that time, it has existed that you don't get the evidence that's held against you. So what does that mean for each individual that has been prosecuted for all these decades? Day in, day out, that happens every day here in New York City. Anybody that's accused of a crime confronts this reality, that they have to basically go into trial blind. So what that means is they can't make an assessment of the strength or weakness of their case. Their defense attorney can't give them a proper consultation and tell them this is what the prosecution has against you. They can't make an educated assessment of what type of plea bargaining they should engage in. So if you take the situation in the context of a real scenario, you're sitting in jail, your defense attorney is futilely trying to get evidence that the prosecution is holding against you. The only way they can do that is by motions right now under this law to the other side, hoping that the judge will grant their motions. Oftentimes they are not granted because you have no right to these pieces of evidence. And all the while, yes, you're sitting in jail. If you can't afford bail, if you don't have the luxury of an attorney who's out there and making demand after demand. And by and large, that's the large majority of people that confront that situation.
All right, so now, in practical sense, you have a guy who's arrested.
Sure.
He goes to Rikers Island. They set bail high enough so he cannot afford to pay bail. He's in jail. He's saying he's innocent. His attorney is attempting to communicate with the district attorney. His defense attorney is attempting to communicate with district attorney, say my client says he's innocent. The district attorney says he's guilty. He's guilty as heck.
Sure.
And the district attorney says, okay, well, if he's guilty, let me see the evidence so I can go back to him and tell him, yo, listen, this is what they have. And the district attorney say, no, we have evidence, but we're not giving it to you.
And we don't have to.
And we don't have to give it to you.
Right.
In other states, what is the criteria as it relates to that particular scenario?
Well,
in most states.
That hypothetical that you gave, which you can see it play out on our Discovery for Justice website. There's actually a...
and give the website.
Yeah, sure. It's a vignette that's played out because we wanted people to be able to see what happens to a person that's in that situation each and every day, 100 times over, from borough to borough, and actually from county to county, all over the state. This isn't just New York City. This is the entire state. This is how it works. So on Discovery, www.discoveryforjustice.org, you go on that website, and there's actually a 15-minute or about 20-minute sketch, and you can watch an actual situation where someone is at an arraignment, and they're being charged with a crime, and they're asking for the evidence against them, and they're told that they're not going to get it, and the prosecutor is basically her despite the objections of the defense counsel, the prosecutor is sustained in denying that person that evidence. And they confront those exact situations that you're talking about. They go home and then they tell their family, I have to sit in jail now for the time being until I can figure out whether or not I want to go to trial, and however long it's going to take to find out what they have against me. And the first thing the family says is, well, what are they, you know, what else, what are your other options? And of course the district attorney approaches you with a plea deal. And rather than sit in jail for what can be, to address your question, anywhere from 6 months to a year, to in some of the more severe cases, people have sat for up to 3 years because of the delays, adjournments, postponements, what have you. That's the situation you're confronting, and that's why a lot of people, you'll see 94% of the cases in New York State, I think, according to the New York Times, plea.
Now,
Hold on, I'm sorry. Let me ask you a question real quickly. Now, you know, obviously they say that people are innocent until proven guilty.
Correct.
Now, I'm curious. Now, it's not that the district attorney cannot release the discovery. They have an option to release it if they want. So in some cases they may say, well, you know what, we'll give you evidence. In other cases they may say we're going to withhold it.
Well,
now, I mean, is that the case? Is it arbitrary?
It's completely arbitrary under the law. It's a pick and choose. At your own discretion, the district attorney can do that. And when I was speaking to a friend about this, he basically in a conversation just in passing about him asking me the same question, he said, well, I guess that's where the mischief is.
Right,
and that's
exactly.
exactly right. There's a lot of room for what we call gamesmanship in that. And when a district attorney may feel inclined to make sure that you, what's the phrase, you know, you got to, play along to get along, or whatever it is,
Right.
then perhaps maybe you'll get something. And you have to, you know, basically at the district attorney's behest or at their leisure,
Right.
will you be able to get anything from them. But in most cases, no. A district attorney can look you in the face and say, I don't have to give this to you, and there's nothing that you can do about it.
And I think most of the time when they have a strong, rock-solid case, they may release it, and other times they don't. How many other states have this law?
Yeah, that's, you know, really one of the main questions to ask. As far as the other states that have this law, I mean, to really examine and understand CPL 240 and how draconian it is, how backwards it is, and how oppressive it is, you have to look at the states that actually have changed the
Right.
law and that have modern discovery and have open, automatic early discovery. And one of the states, my favorite example is Texas. Texas, known as a trium and frium state, right? We know the reputation of Texas across the country, and how they view the rights of defendants. But even Texas, last year, repealed their law and replaced it with a modern discovery law. So I think there's an interesting article that I've read online. It's questioning whether or not New York will follow the Lone Star State's lead. So this is one area in which a state like Texas, and there are many others, are far ahead of us as far as progressiveness in their laws and the rights of the accused when it comes to criminal justice.
Now, let me ask you a question. Are they talking about a bill? Being put forth. Is it a standing bill right now?
Well, by standing bill, you mean is there something out there right now that people
Right.
can support? Right now, we want to introduce legislation. And we have some folks that are out there that are supporting legislation. And that's what this flyer, I think if you guys can cue to this flyer, this event that's happening this Thursday, April 16th. And it's at 1199 SEIU's offices, which 42nd Street, 330 42nd Street. It's on the flyer. It's also on our website, so you can check it out there.
Give the website address again.
www.discoveryforjustice.org.
Right.
So that'll come into focus.
Right, there
But
you
you'll see this is an open forum on criminal discovery and repeal of CPL 240. And we're going to do a panel where we're going to have experts in the field address this issue. This isn't a novel issue. This isn't a new question. The New York State Bar Association had a task force assembled by, I believe, was the chief judge of the state of New York to basically examine whether or not this law should be changed, because it's been changed in most other states. And, you know, no surprise, the task force recommendation was that New York should have a modern discovery law where there is open, automatic, and early discovery of evidence against the accused. That's only fair. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because I'm sure as you've heard, and as anytime you open up any newspaper on any given day, how many times will you open to the page where there's a wrongful conviction, where there's a civil liability suit, where there's an award of how X number of millions of dollars against the city, the state, whatever county prosecuted an individual. And we're finding that in a large percentage of those cases, it's because discovery and evidence that was held by the prosecution isn't turned over. And a lot of people say, well, look, you have a right to evidence against you. If there's anything that's exculpatory, that has to be turned over. Yeah, but then again, whose decision is that to make? Whose decision is it to decide whether or not what's material, what's relevant against you? And it all lies in the hands of the prosecutor.
Now, last question. What is the holdup to this law being passed? Because I know it was submitted in the last administration, but it was allowed to die in committee. Who's holding up the passage of this law, which seems to be a fair law?
Well, which I just said. I mean, as you can see, even the New York State Bar Association has unanimously called for the reform of this law. So you'd say, okay, well, legally, from the legal perspective of it, there's a approval of changing the law. But it gets tied up. Where does it get tied up? Well, not in the Assembly, because in the Assembly we've had a traditionally Democratic Assembly that supported these types of measures, but in the Republican-controlled state Senate. And a lot of times this bill doesn't come out of committee, and that's the problem. So the focus has to be on those Republican senators that have power in the committee to approve this and let this bill basically pass committee and be voted on the floor.
And it's going to take some pressure by voters.
That's exactly
to
right.
force them.
It's not going to happen just because, we're sitting here at a table talking about it. It's going to take people coming out to support it, which is another reason why we're having the event on Thursday, because this is going to be basically a situation where you need the community to step up and to make these demands and to call for fairness. And right now, if I can just add, is a great time, because what we hear all across the state, and even all across the country, is the demand for criminal justice reform. But the problem is there aren't very specific demands as far as what is needed to make the process a more fair process. And this is one concrete measure that we can point to that's working in other states and that will work in New York and that is long overdue. I mean, they have it right across the river in New Jersey, and they've had it for about the last 40 years. And a lot of times people say, well, what about witnesses? Won't witnesses be intimidated if you change the law? Well, again, look right across the river to New Jersey. There isn't some sort of bloodletting in New Jersey because witnesses' information is being shared with the defense. That's not happening. Here in New York, it's not going to happen either. In other states, there are measures to protect against that because there are measures as far as protective orders that you can seek, and that's part of the bill. So everything has been basically addressed in CPL 245, and we will have people that have worked on CPL 245 speak at our panel on Thursday. So if anyone in the audience is interested in that and would like to learn more, we'd invite them to come. It's an open panel.
Okay, we're calling for the repeal of CPL 240 and the adaptation of CPL 245. There's an open forum on criminal discovery and repeal as April 16, that's this Thursday.
That's this Thursday.
At 6 p.m. at 1199 headquarters on the 33rd floor penthouse of 330 West 42nd Street. That's once again April 16th, this Thursday at 6 p.m., 1199 at 330 West 42nd Street, the 33rd floor. Everybody's invited. And the email address one more time?
Well, the website is www.discoveryforjustice.org. And we're going to try to live stream that event. So even if you can't make it, check out our website to see if you can see the live stream feed, either during the event or afterwards. You can queue it up.
Okay, once again, Vincent, hold on a second.
Okay.
Avagliano.
That's as good as you can be expected. No, I appreciate that.
Right, thank you for coming. And hold on a second.
Thank you very much.
Now we're going to talk about something that's been, and we invite, once again, we encourage all of you, viewing audience, to come out to this program, support this move. There's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of individuals incarcerated in this criminal justice system, and the district attorney a lot of times hold evidence because in many cases they don't have it, and they 6 months down the line they either drop the case, or 8 months down the line they drop the case, or et cetera, et cetera. So let's support this effort April 16 at 1199 330 West 42nd Street. Issue number 2, but first we'd like to welcome Big Michael Graves is here now. As we said, he was on community cop assignment, so he just came in and he has a lot of information to report. But we want to talk about some of the horrific, diabolical shootings that have taken place as of late that seem to be on the increase. One in particular, of a shooting recently of brother. What's the brother's name, Julian? In
Eric
South
Harris?
Carolina?
Oh, in South Carolina.
Right.
Walter Scott.
Yeah, Walter Scott shot by Michael Slager. Let's see if we have that of a short video of that police shooting. Then we're going to discuss it real quick, and we'll appeal to Julian, our legal brain, to break it down. Let's see if we have that. Do we have that queued up? For those of you who haven't seen it?
No.
Okay, we don't have it queued up, but many of you have seen it. And if in the course of discourse of our discussion, Julian, some of your thoughts of that shooting. It's going nationwide, worldwide, where police officer Slager shot individuals who were fleeing Walter Scott in the back. He shot at him 8 times. I think he hit him 4 or 5 times. Now there's some discussion of whether or not he was subsequently arrested for murder. And there's some discussion whether or not he will be found guilty or not guilty. First of all, the shooting. What is your critique of the particular shooting from a legal standpoint?
Well, I don't see any justification in that shooting. I mean, the victim was fleeing, running away from the police officer. He showed no signs of threat. The police officer it appeared as if he could even physically catch up with the victim that was running away from him. But at that time, he chose to pull out his firearm and shoot at him. The part of I think one of the big issues is I don't think that police officer went from being a good police officer, upholding the law, being fair, treating everyone equally in a just manner, to just shooting someone in the back. I think that there had to be some type of problem in the way that he enforces the law, whether it's how he deals with African Americans or just how he deals with the community. But I think that there was a real problem that had not been addressed by either that administration or the hierarchy of that particular police department. I think if we think that this is an anomaly in the way that he deals with people in the community, I think that we are sadly mistaken.
Michael, many who have watched the film see how grotesque it is for a police officer to shoot an individual who doesn't present an imminent threat of serious physical injury or death to him. By running away, this officer was not in danger at all. But to just take out his weapon so casually, as Julian stated, it was very casual. It's not as if he was under stress. It's not as some people talk about cops have to make a quick decision in a second. He was very casual, very determined in taking out his weapon and shooting at a human being in the back, something that he wouldn't even do to a dog. What were some of your critiques of the
I know
shooting?
they have the film ready now, but I'll just say for the record that I think his problem was endemic of what you find across the country with white police officers. That police officer, one can make the excuse through no fault of his own, but like his comrades, did not look at the brother as a human being, Scott. Because if you looked at him as a human being, you would not shoot somebody merely for running away from you. Yes, you could be mad, a little ticked up that you got to run and chase him down, but that goes with the job. And certainly a guy who was 50 and out of shape. I mean, he was really out of shape, as slow as he was running. We don't have to question why he ran. The question is, the thing is the professionalism of that police officer, and since he didn't see him as a human being, that's why when you look at these other tapes, you overheard him laughing. When he was speaking to someone, a commanding officer, he's spoken to a superior officer, pardon me, and when he told him that everything was okay, he had a laugh. He said, well, gather your thoughts, don't worry about it. We're going to take your gun for a while, and over the next few days, nobody's going to ask you any questions, which shows you clear obstruction of justice. Here he has a superior officer telling him, don't worry about it. Nobody's going to ask you any questions right now. You got a few days, take it easy. Then we'll go through the process with you. So that was acting in concert, obstruction of justice. And certainly the other police officer, the black one, Havisham, I think, whatever his name is, Havisham, he should be ashamed of himself because he wrote a report that was consistent with Slater's report. And it just shows you when you're dealing with a black person and you do not view them as a human being, you consider that activity normal.
Julian, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about him evidently, clearly, because as Drake did, you don't go from 0 to 100, from being a good police officer to shooting somebody that many times. It's to me it appeared as if he was shooting like he was hunting, or whether he was shooting at a target, at a police academy. Shooting, not at no way, shape, or form would I assume that he's shooting at a live human being. But the legality as it relates to shooting a fleeing felon. shooting somebody in the back. Because there are some now discussions whether or not this is a legal shooting or illegal or a illegal shooting. What are some of your thoughts on the legality? We ain't even going to talk about the human aspect, but from the law, is an officer justified?
Well, see, each state has different laws. Now, I remember at one time in New York State, you could shoot a fleeing felon if he posed an imminent threat to someone, as he was running. If a guy's running down the street with a firearm and he's letting rounds go and he may hit somebody, okay, at that point they would say that you were justified in shooting a fleeing felon. So when you talk about legality, I think we can talk about the law and we can talk about justification. And there was no justification in this shooting.
Very important.
And I think that's something we really need to talk about. And I think that we have to be clear. When you have all these pundits and you have all of these legal strategists talking about whether the shooting was good or his state of mind at the time, we have to be clear. People are going to attempt to sway it, maneuver it in the direction that they wanted to. But the bottom line, and we have to be clear and strictly look at the facts, was it a justified shooting? And based on the evidence that has been put before us via videotape, it was not justified. So we have to remember that.
And Julie makes another excellent point. A lot of people are talking about whether or not Brother Scott should have ran. Why did he run? As if that had anything to do with the justification, to Julian's point, of the police officer using deadly physical force. Because, we can have the debate, should he ran, should he not have run, but the sentence of running is not death. So what is, and Julian always talk about smoke and mirrors. That's a conversation you can have, but it has nothing to do as to whether or not the officer was justified in shooting him and killing him. Should he have ran, should he have not have ran? So when people try to mix those two conversations, Julian always attempts to keep us focused. That's a B question. That's a B answer to an A question. So what do you say to those who want to entertain, he shouldn't have ran, why did he run, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, again, I don't have to lean to my own understanding. I could just look at what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court made it clear there was debates that went on for years. Those should have ended in 1985 with Tennessee versus Garner. Made it crystal clear you cannot shoot a fleeing felon unless someone is in imminent danger. It made it crystal clear. And for him running in an open area away from that situation did not pose a threat to anyone. Therefore, the Supreme Court is crystal clear you cannot shoot a fleeing felon in that case. And certainly, not only if there was a felony involved, the felony was the police officer himself. You saw him after he tased him. And he tased him because of retribution for making him run. And obviously, he made his mind on the spot. He's not running the second time. So right when he tased him and it knocked him down, but did not get the effects that he wanted to get, and the Scott got up, he took off. He obviously was discombobulated and in a lot of pain from that taser. He struggled to his feet, and when he got on his feet, he ran a second time, and that police officer, Slager, made a clear decision at that point. I'm not running again. Made it crystal clear. And this is when he went from taser to his firearm. So it was no mistake, and he said, I'm not running again, and took it out and shot him like you would shoot down a dog. They got states where if you shot a dog like that, running away with no apparent threat to no one, you can lose your job. But he chose to do it, shot 8 times, hit him 5 times in his torso. Consequently, he lost his life, and then after he went over there and started the handcuff process, and the other police officer showed up, told him to finish the handcuff, ran back, got his taser, ran back up to the victim, and dropped it right near him. So, I mean, that was crystal clear, caught on camera. So, consequently, he doesn't have a leg to stand on. Not only did he should be hit with the current charges, which is homicide, he should also be hit with obstruction of justice.
Right. Now, Julian, what would have happened, you think, in this case, had there not been a videotape of this particular shooting?
Well, first of all, we would be talking about an entire different story. I think the way the story would have been relayed to the general public would have been only one told by the officer, and he could have phrased it, couched it, put it any way that he wanted to. you know, they always say dead men tell no tale. And if we didn't have this on video, the only story that we would have been able to take from outside of the physical evidence, and then you got to be careful how physical evidence is processed. The only story we would have would be the one of the officer. So I think it would have been skewed in a manner that would have been beneficial to him, and I think that we would be having a totally different discussion.
Now, some people are applauding the police commissioner for termination and the mayor for making critical comments as it relates to this officer's actions. You know, I warn our community. We've seen it before. We've seen it with Mayor. What's our former mayor's name? The billionaire.
Bloomberg
Mayor Bloomberg
and
Kelly.
Kelly.
We've seen it now with Commissioner Del Blasio.
Right, De Blasio and Bratton.
Commissioner Bratton on the Eric Garner. You know, first they were saying how horrific it is, and then they called it a possible chokehold. But that has nothing to do, and also the video has nothing to do with the officer ultimately being convicted. Convicted and sentenced. So we shouldn't get too happy. We shouldn't, you know, act as if the victory is won, because we've seen this picture before.
Right. And we can go all the way back to the Rodney King, when you start talking about videos and seeing the abuses that go on in our community, and it seems to be a very clear and concise view of what had happened or what happened, and then what we get back when it's all said and done is a non-conviction or a lesser conviction than we may have thought.
Now, how do you feel as it relates to the individual who actually filmed the video now fearing for his life?
Well, the thing is, the mayor of that town gave universal praise in those initial 2 days from Saturday to Monday to that police officer in question. They were not planning on investigating Slager. They took him at his word, even though all of those rounds in the back, but the report, his police report, had him shooting him in the chest and the back, which is reminiscent of Omar Edwards here in New York City. So he lied on the police report about that. They should have investigated and found out and distinguished entrance wounds from exit wounds, would have put them under scrutiny had it not been a video. But we know it's the video that made the mayor and made that police commissioner fire the police officer Slager. Also, when you look at Slager, you hear the other commentary about him laughing. You know now that other police officers, especially even the black one, wrote a report consistent with the police report that Slager wrote that was all lies. So only thing, the redeeming value of all this is the tape, and now the person who taped it, he's in fear of his life, and they even talking about deporting him, which is not right. He's from the Dominican Republic, and they're raising questions about deporting him, and that's not right.
And Julian, Michael brought up an excellent point that a lot of people are missing. Michael, your friend Reverend Sharpton over the weekend applauded the mayor and the police commissioner. The family even applauded the mayor and the police commissioner for his actions in terminating him and the district attorney bringing murder charges. As Michael stated, there would have been no further investigation had it not been for popping up in this video. It was clear that this individual was shot in the back. The police commissioner should have known he was shot in the back 4 times. The mayor should have 5 times. The mayor should have known before the video that he was shot in the back 4 or 5 times. This should have been problematic from day one. But it's only when the video made it to the public and the light is shined and no one can hide that they take action. Why are we applauding these individuals after the fact? Julian, explain this to me.
There's no explanation, brother. But what I will say is that they say integrity is when you tell the truth when people don't see what you do, not when you tell the truth when people see what you do. Or when there's my point is because there's a video, now everyone's willing to say, oh, listen, what was done was wrong, blah, blah, blah. Now, if there wasn't a video, would they have taken, and apparently not, taken the same stance of saying, listen, what he did was wrong, he should be held accountable, we're going to prosecute, we're going to arrest. That's not, as you stated, a position that should be applauded. I'll applaud you when everyone else is saying what he did was right, and you stand alone and say, listen, I have the evidence, I know what he did was wrong, and I'm going to prosecute him as a mayor or as a district attorney.
And I think you wanted to make another point before.
No, I'm glad you asked that question, because that was the point that I wanted to make about integrity.
And real quick, before we go to the telephones, and we'll pop our phone number up. You see the body of the brother on the ground after being shot from the back. Funny that you talk about a taser, Michael. In South Carolina, Officer Bates,
Right.
who was a volunteer police officer, shot at Eric Harris while he laid on the ground, and he claims that he thought it was a taser that he withdrew from his holster, and he fired a fatal weapon of an individual that once again didn't present a threat of serious physical injury or death to anybody. He's been arrested recently. What's going on with all of these horrific unjustified shootings? We've seen this before in Oakland, similar,
Right.
where officer took out
Oscar
a gun.
Grant.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think that they are truly ill affected by the same disease, which is not an impediment in America, and it's white supremacy. He fails to look at a black person. That's cognitive dissonance, by the way, an inability to process certain types of information. And he cannot look at a black person and see a human being when he's looking at him. Your taser oftentimes is located in your offhand.
It has to be.
It's in your offhand, so you won't make that mistake.
Right.
So you literally have to reach across your body to reach your offhand, the hip of your offhand, as opposed to your strong hand, which has your firearm. So muscle has memory, training. You always go to your power side, and when there's a problem, you do not go to your offhand. You have to go to your offhand to get it. Consequently, I don't buy that as an excuse. He does not see him as a human being. Consequently, he didn't think twice about pumping around in his back.
And Julian, phone calls will be coming to you right after Julian. Julian, when you and I were on patrol, we didn't have a taser. No. And we restrained or constrained many individuals, harmlessly. I see the taser as being good in particular instances, but it seems now to be, listen, you're talking, you're not listening to me right now, I'm gonna tase you. So I see the abuse of the taser being used across the board. Officers are too quick to pull out their taser. In this instance, why did he even shoot him with a taser?
Well, first of all,
Right, exactly.
You're so right. Now, he was already on the ground.
Right.
He was already on the ground. There was no reason to taser him. But unfortunately, as I stated earlier, and you said 0 to 100. I always say when people say I go from 0 to 100, I always say be careful because you might run into a brick wall. Now, this is what you have to remember. If this officer is abusive in making false arrests, if he's abusive in being heavy-handed, if he's abusive in putting evidence on people when they haven't committed a crime, there's a gambit of abuses. So, I don't want us to only have an issue when officers are abusive when it comes to killing our people. When they use a taser when it's not necessary, when they're overzealous in roughing people up and those are problematics. Those are problems. These people, I always say, everyone's not meant to be a doctor, everyone's not meant to be a lawyer, and everybody's not meant to be a police officer. These people who have the ability and the capability and the probability to be abusive do not belong in a position of law enforcement. We have to look at that across the board, not just when our people or people are innocently killed. Any abuse is wrong when you talk about law enforcement.
And that's an excellent statement. As we go to our phones right now, there's thousands upon thousands of abuses police officers routinely make to members of the African American community. The worst, of course, is the unlawful taking of African Americans' life. But as you stated, prior to officers getting to that point, there's other abuses by the thousands that are being committed routinely by these abusive officers. But caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Are you on the air, caller? Okay, I see our phone lines are filled, but we don't hear anything out here.
Hello?
Okay, there you go, caller. Where you calling from, caller?
Kareem from Harlem, brother. How y'all doing?
Okay, hold tight, brother. Quick question or comment?
Okay, I got a comment, brother. Listen, when Nazis killed the Jews, what did they do? Did they have a solid march, or did they go out and take them Germans' heads? When it's time for black people to be stood over to kill other people who are not in their enemy in other countries, we can jump up and do that. But when it comes time to stopping these crackers from killing our own people, we're not even damn men. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves. Malcolm made it very clear, brother. We need to take these crackers' heads. They're killing our people, they're murdering our people, and we need to stop sitting back talking all this Negro stuff and start killing these crackers. That's my comment. Peace.
All right. Thank you for calling. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
Hello?
Yes, where you calling from, caller?
Yeah, I'm calling from Harlem, bro.
Okay, quick question or comment, brother.
Yeah, I'm going to make this real quick. You know, first of all, I'm not ashamed. You know what I'm saying? If anything, you know, I'm ready to do what I got to do. I ain't going to blow it up on TV. But, you know, I'm tired of Sharpton with him so quick to want to, like, appease with these devils and whatnot. Like, somehow we're going to make it to where we want to be if we make friends with the people that's kicking us in the behind. And, you know, this situation out in Oakland and whatnot, I don't know if y'all brothers had mentioned it, but the man, the devil that shot that brother and whatnot was a 72-year-old real estate agent and whatnot that was basically there on a ride-along. You know what I mean? They let him play cop for a day or whatever. And I've held on to a 357 before. I never held on to a taser, but I would imagine that there's a weight differential and whatnot. How do you mistake it, you know, like a 4-pound joint for what? How much does a taser weigh?
Right.
You know what I mean? And he gonna shoot this brother and just say, "Oh, I'm being whatnot."
Right. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? The brother's begging for his breath, and they have still breathe.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm
and-
saying?
Yeah.
But this is basically, they got open season on us and whatnot, and we got to get rid of these misleading niggas.
Right. All right.
Peace,
Excellent,
y'all.
excellent point. And Julian, I know we were talking about before the program is when he was gasping the air and informing the officers that he couldn't breathe, just like in the Eric Garner case, his pleas and his cries and his informing the officers, "I can't breathe." And what was the comment of the white police officers?
F your breath. You know.
F your breath while his knee was on his head.
Right,
Right.
right. And you know, it's so important, and Mike is so right, and I say this all the time. They don't, you know, they're not looking at us as humans when
Right.
they're dealing with us. I mean,
Right.
you don't put your knee in someone's head. If someone tells you you can't breathe,
Exactly.
they can't breathe. You don't say, well, left, I don't care, you can't breathe.
Right.
They don't do that in other communities. I'm telling you, and we have to be clear, this is a specific attack on African people.
Right.
And I think that when we look at it and try to paint it with a broad brush, thinking that that's just how they respond when they deal with anyone who they believe is violating the law, that's not the case.
And don't show me pictures of ISIS over in the Middle East. Don't show me what's going on in Afghanistan and people getting killed. Show me what's going on in the streets of America where white police officers outright murdering African Americans on film and getting away with it. So if you're an African American, a member of the African American community, whenever somebody tries to deflect on what's going on over there, let's talk about what's going on right here.
And the one in Chicago with the 17-year-old child, they're now trying to rush and give the family $5 million. You know, the Rahm Emanuel administration, because the feds are getting ready to come in to review that case. They covered it up. They will not give the family the tape. They have the tapes of the incident, so it only shows you that they're going to hide. It's the same thing that happened with Omar Edwards, the same way they confiscated all the tapes. But they have the tapes, and the feds are coming to ask for the tape, so they're trying to quickly rush that family to take the $5 million. And in all these cases, what they're doing is that they're going to talk to these families, especially if they're indigent, to give them some hush money. And by the way, I'm just glad that that family refused to have Sharpton involve himself. They told him to stay home and not to bring the circus.
I think he was at the funeral. I think he spoke at the funeral.
No, he didn't speak at the funeral.
He spoke. I know he definitely spoke at a church. I don't know whether it was a
He didn't
funeral or
speak
not.
at the funeral.
Okay. And, you know, when you have things, I'm sorry, folk callers, what's happening in Ferguson, when the Justice Department say that police department, the district attorney's office, the judges have pounced on the African-American community illegally to oppress them, to extort them. When you have law enforcement entities oppressing our community, don't tell me about ISIS. Don't tell me about the government of Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Syria. I don't want to hear about that garbage. Tell me what's going on in the United States of America, because we trump any of them countries that we go over there, putting our chest out, talking about how fair we are, how judicious we are, and there's more and more injustice going on in this country, or just as much as injustice going on in this country as any place on the planet. So don't hear me that. But next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
Am I on the air?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll say how y'all brothers doing. This is the Pat from Brooklyn.
Okay, how you doing, sister?
I'd like to speak to your guest about the unjust laws. It's interesting that he brought up that Criminal Procedure Law 240.
Right.
But along with Criminal Procedure Law 240, there's also the Criminal Procedure Law 140.50. And I just want to read this real quick. It's very brief.
Okay.
This was stated by a panel, and I'm just going to briefly read it. Testifying before the Assembly Committee on Code, Judiciary, Correction, Health, Alcoholism, Drug Abuse, and Social Services, Robert A. Perry of the New York Civil Liberty Union cited a report by the Commission of Future Indigent Defense Services that said, the plea bargaining process is largely hidden from the public scrutiny. Blacks find themselves in a legal jeopardy, unequal access to legal resources, most charged are poor, most rely upon the state public defense system, which is in a state of crisis. African Americans are penalized by unjust laws in violation of the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution that allows the illegal policies of practices of stop, question, and frisk, illegal arrest, wrongful conviction, and mass incarceration of black men, women, and children. Whites are protected by constitutional provisions of probable cause, but African Americans are being accosted on the basis of reasonable suspicion. Discriminatory policies and practice perpetrated against African Americans are badges of slavery and reminiscent of New York state laws of colonial era. I just want to just put that out there because these unjust laws need to be repealed.
Okay.
And I just like to say that. Thank you.
Okay, excellent point.
Excellent.
Excellent point, sister. Excellent reading. What's happening in Ferguson in terms of the criminal justice system is happening in New York City. Your state senators know it. Your state assembly know it. Or your borough president know it. The mayor knows it. District attorneys know it. Everybody knows that this is a racist.
Public
criminal
advocate?
Public advocate knows it. Everyone knows that this is a racist, white supremacist criminal justice system which exploits African American and Latinos and poor folks in the city. But nobody. It's not a point of argument for anybody. So thank you, sister, for reading that. Next caller. Welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
I'm calling from Harlem. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hotep, brother.
Hotep. I just want to say, first of all, Reverend Sharpton went to a vigil the day after the funeral.
Okay.
On a Sunday, and they marched to the spot where Brother Scott was killed.
Right.
Now, with that being said, the witness said that when he walked up upon Mr. Scott and the officer, that Mr. Scott was on the ground and under control. So why didn't he put the cuffs on him then, instead of allowing him to get up? And then when he did get up and he ran away again, it's just like Julian said, and I've said, but nobody else on these news shows is saying, he could have very easily chased him down and brought him under control. Now with that, and he shouldn't have to die for child support. That makes no sense at all. Now, with that other shooting in Tulsa, Oklahoma, not only are those cops guilty of some very bad acting for the cameras, playing it up for the cameras like you guys always say. This is what these cops are going to do now that these people have body cameras, and in some jurisdictions, they're allowed to turn off their body cameras. So this is what happens when you have Barney Fife out there playing policeman. And unfortunately, nothing's going to happen to him, I don't think, because he's in cahoots with the chief of police. He's donated money and equipment to the police department, so I don't think he's going to do any kind of jail time.
Okay, thank you for your call.
Thank you, gentlemen.
He also ran his campaign. That's why he got that position, because
When you talk about he who?
The one who shot the victim.
Oh, it was
No,
Slager.
not Slager. The guy, the 73-year-old guy, contributed to his campaign for him to become sheriff,
Oh, you
and he
talking
was his
Bates.
campaign.
His name was Bates.
Yeah, he was a campaign. Yeah, his name was Bates. He was the campaign manager. That's why he got rewarded there. Not only because of the money, he ran his campaign.
All right, next caller. Welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
Hello, Community Cop family. Brother Ray, how y'all doing?
Hotep, brother.
I'm so disgusted of constantly seeing these killings and the state-sponsored terrorism. It's got to be state-sponsored terrorism. But I'm going to ask you, in the light of cameras and everything, and what this guy just did, they just think of us like animals, and we must not be aware of it. Do you really, really, really think that even with cameras and what they did, that these police officers will go to jail? Do you really, really think?
All right, and thank you. Good question. Julian, we start with you.
Well, I mean, listen. I mean, if we look at history, the answer is no, because there's been a few occasions where there have been videotaping of abuses by police officers, and they didn't go to jail or do time or were convicted. I'm hoping in this case that it does happen.
We knew Darren Wilson wasn't going to jail. We knew Pantaleo wasn't going to jail. And this police officer will not go to jail for murder, even though it's on camera. It won't be for murder. Maybe they'll drop it down to some manslaughter charge. But he is not going to jail for 20 years for killing a black man in South Carolina. It's not going to happen.
Right, white man with a pregnant white wife and white children. I say no, innocent.
And
innocent.
think about
and
it.
don't forget, Automatic said the trial is won and lost by jury selection. All they need is one sympathetic jurist as it relates to the police officer.
Tell the people what you was talking about with the medical.
What's that?
The wife of the fire police officer.
Right, to show you how, but this is the person that Reverend Sharpton and all these individuals are giving kudos to. Now, this man is fired because he murdered. He's arrested for murder. But the police commissioner said, we're going to let his family continue to have benefits, even though he's no longer affiliated with the department.
But let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Is the police commissioner paying for those benefits? Who's paying for those benefits?
Exactly.
The community.
The people.
Exactly. The family of the man who was killed are paying the benefits for this police officer's wife to get the medical benefits.
And I've never heard of that. A person being disassociated from an agency, but somehow, mysteriously, their family will still receive benefits. So that's an inclination of, and you can't go by what these people say, they have forked tongue. Didn't Chief Rainbow tell you that? These people have forked tongues, they're liars.
But the mayor did that. The mayor
the mayor.
The mayor made that decision because you got to remember, when the mayor see that police officer, he sees himself.
Right.
When he see Scott, he doesn't see himself. There's no self-identification there. So that so-called poor white woman that's pregnant is going to get the benefits to have the child free without paying for anything.
All right, next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Harlem Hotel.
Hotel, brother.
I'm glad you guys just touched on that. I guess they're going to put a college fund aside for the child, too.
Yes, why not?
Family, you know what I mean?
Right.
But here's the thing I wanted to touch on. You guys mentioned about video footage. Video footage seems to be obsolete, in today's society. Because I went to trial in a federal court where the video footage actually showed the officers doing me wrong. The city corp council allowed the officers to change their testimony time and time again with the video footage showing that the only reason why a sergeant by the name of Philip Tarpos arrested me was because I was black and in public. He said the reason why they police our community the way they do is because we're subject and prone to more crime than any other race. But here's the thing. Times Square has just as much crime as Harlem. Have they shut Times Square down? Because I hope the family of Akai Gurley have the courage and commitment to wanting results instead of taking a settlement like the last family you spoke about. Because I'd just like to see what the story's going to be when it comes time for them to say what Akai Gurley was doing in that stairwell. They're going to probably lie and say he went in there to do a hand-to-hand drug transaction, and they're going to allow the officers supporting that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your call, caller. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
Calling from the Rockaway.
Okay, Rockaway, real quick, we write it down.
This is Keisha Uncle, gentlemen, love you all.
Likewise,
Thank
brother.
you, brother.
Okay, brother, I just want to understand, Brother Harper, Noel, how can I tell my sons and daughters go someplace because ISIS is killing his enemies, but we're afraid of standing to our enemies here. And the 70-year-old devil that shot that brother who was acting like a sheriff, and remind me of the case of Trayvon Martin. And this federal government, brother, heard the tape where George Zimmerman was told not to follow him. And this government attorney still let this devil go.
Right.
We're in a sad situation, brother.
Right. All right, we definitely are. Thank you for your call, caller.
Yes, sir.
Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Manhattan.
Hotel, brother.
Yeah, I just want to throw this out there and change a little bit. Here we go again in the black community. Hillary Clinton announces she's going to be running for president of the United States. And what do all the black leaders do? They get on their hands and their knees and they sing the old Negro spiritual. Wow, we got a white person that likes her, so let's give her all our votes. She ain't got to do nothing. She ain't got to say nothing. We just give her our votes. We don't make her do anything. Here we go again. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Brother, you're 100% right. Hillary Clinton has done nothing regarding stop, question, and frisk. Nothing but police brutality, nothing in regards to gentrification in our communities, nothing in regards to New York City having the most segregated school system in the country.
No, hold on, brother. I got to stop you.
Yes, sir.
I got to stop you.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't know why you attacking her, because she does not stand alone. Because I want you to find me one elected official that stood up and dealt with those issues that are affecting our community.
Exactly, but I'm talking about just because
I'm just saying.
Yes.
I'm just saying we need to cover all of them.
But you know, to Caller's point, everyone's lining up and crowning her once again the Prince of New York.
She has no skill, no talent. She has not distinguished herself in any legal quarters among any legal battles of note. The only thing she can hang her hat on is that she was married to a former president. They shuttled her here to New York, took her out of Chicago, took her out of the White House, and brought her here to New York and gave her an uncontested seat, the U.S. Senate. She has been able to maneuver and get Secretary of State, which she was unqualified to be Secretary of State. She was unqualified to be a U.S. Senator. Did not meet the threshold on any of those jobs, and she's walking into the White House. She didn't even do a press conference where she had to ask her questions yesterday. She put out a video where mainly it was all families and all that discussing things. She didn't have to say anything. This is the way she's always had it, and it's a disgrace.
All right, but at the end of the day, as the caller stated, all the so-called black leaders are enthusiastically supporting her once again. But we have so much going on, but we have to close. Julian, closing comments?
First of all, I'd like to thank my community cop family, my brothers here, for supporting me and my family at our time of the loss of my dad. Thank you guys, and I love you. And Dad, again, as I always say, I love you. Mom, I love you. My sister, Pat, I love you. And thanks again, family.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just want to say for the record, just big respect to the black community for its turnout for Dr. Ben, one of our legends. He was strong and upright, and the community sent him home right. Reinstate Alton Maddox.
Don't forget, April 16, 6 p.m. at the 1199 headquarters, 330 West 42nd Street. We'd like to thank Sheila Berry, Veronica Kitt, Nat Woods, all the engineer here at Manhattan Neighborhood Network that allowed this program to be shown. Little Mo, I love you, brothers and sisters, family. We at war. We should be at war. As Father Luke is saying, we being attacked, we ain't fighting back. So I guess it's not really war. We have to open up our eyes to what's going on. You know, don't let people deflect of what's going on. When you look at a picture, everybody looks for themselves first, except for us. We look for everybody else. We have to take care of our own business, be preoccupied with our concerns. And murders like this, we have to make certain that this officer is put under the jail. And don't applaud, don't give any complimentary comments to anybody until he's put in jail. Their statements mean nothing. Look at that.
As he casually walks up to them.
Exactly. Look at the casualness.